Good afternoon, everybody. Um, I'm not going to attempt to get everyone to introduce themselves, otherwise our hour will be finished before everybody has, because we've got a lovely crowd of people here. I'm Sarah Boer. I'm primarily a novelist, but a very experienced creative writing teacher. I've taught creative writing in all kinds of settings for more years than I care to mention, script and poetry and fiction writing. So I hope that you'll enjoy the hour that we have ahead of us. The idea entirely is for it to be fun. I will be sort of going through technical things to do with sonnet writing. Has anybody written, have I got any, wonderfully experienced poets here who turn out prize-winning sonnets before breakfast every morning? Or are we all relative beginners? Ethne's got her thumbs up. If you want to unmute yourself to speak, by all means do.
I haven't written anything prize-winning, but it's a form that I know quite well, and it's Etna.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
I was going to say I was an English teacher, so I've taught it a lot.
Okay, so you can put me right when I go wrong. Lovely, thank you. So what I wanted to do was do something that would recognise the fact that we're all shut in at home, and that would enable us to have fun with some sort of our domestic environment. Did everybody manage to assemble 14 objects from around their household? Okay, so does everybody know why, for a start, it might be 14? So a sonnet, for those who don't know, is a 14-line poem. So we begin with the 14 objects, and that's going to give us our scaffolding to do something, a little bit creative and off the wall later. So the first thing that I would like you to do is I would like you to spend a couple of minutes jotting down a few words that come to your mind in connection with these objects. So the sort of thing you might think about is what the object feels like, what it looks like, what its texture and shape and weight are if you pick it up. What sound does it make if you tap it with your fingers or bang it on a table, if you can do that? Does it sound? Is it too soft to make a sound? Is it something that has a smell or a taste? So think about this object and all your senses and how you would engage all your senses, and see if you can jot down just a few words, maybe 3 or 4 words, doesn't have to be in any sort of order, that come to your mind when you reflect on the object. And that you need to do that for each of the objects. So I shall give you, I'm not going to give you too long because I don't want you to overthink this. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes from now, and then I will come back and we'll talk more. If anybody has a question, I know that Beth is monitoring the chat, the on-screen chat, but if anybody wants to ask me a question direct, if you just unmute yourself, and I will be here and I can hopefully answer.
Sorry, I missed the start. Is it just household objects that we select?
Yes, you should have had them with you, actually. You should have brought them with you. I think everybody who signed up did get an email from Live Art Local asking them to bring 14 objects with them. If you haven't got them, if you can scoot round and gather a few things. But as we've only got an hour, it's going to be quite tight.
Okay, they'll just be a bit random, but maybe that'll
be
helpful. Okay.
Might be an advantage, you never know.
Apologies for being disorganized.
would you excuse me 1 minute? My doorbell is ringing. Just carry on among yourselves and I'll be back. Sorry, I'm back.
What do we have to do?
Okay, have you got, who's talking to me?
Timothy.
Oh yes, Timothy. I wrote for you on the chat. What you need to do, have you got your 14 objects from around your house?
No.
Oh, so you need 14 objects from around the house. Can be anything, you know, kitchen things, toys, whatever. And you need to bring them to the class because you're going to write about them. Can you do that?
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
No worries. The rest of you, there's about a minute on this stage before we move on, please. Okay, I'm going to stop you there. And I'm going to ask you now to just move on and add something to this list of words. For anybody who came late, do look at what I've written on the chat with the instructions. Start at the beginning and you can catch up with us as we move through. I'm sure you'll get a chance to do that while I'm talking. You can write and not listen to me. So for the next stage, what I want you to do is I want you to think about not just the physical attributes of the object, but the kind of feelings it evokes in you. Think about why you chose to bring this particular object. So, for example, I have a set of wooden spoons I'm particularly attached to because they have history in the family. You know how wooden spoons do. You know, that you may have picked something that means something to you, or you might have picked something totally at random, but try and think about the mood that it evokes, what it means to you. If you chose this at random, what mood were you in? Were you in a rush thinking, oh heavens, this starts in 5 minutes and I haven't done anything yet? Were you thinking, let's experiment and do this randomly? So if it doesn't have any kind of obvious meaning for you, think about the kind of surroundings in which you picked it out for today's workshop. And add maybe 2 or 3 words to the list you have.
I'm changing it to where it needs to be. It needs to be there.
Timothy, can you mute, lovey, if you're not talking to me, so that thank you. Again, about 5 minutes, of which 2 have already elapsed.
Can I just quickly ask, I've
Yeah.
only written 7. Should I just focus on those 7?
No, because you're going to need all 14 in order to
Okay.
produce the 14 lines. So try and
Right.
do something with all of them if you can.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I shall stop you there. I notice more people stop writing more quickly there. I can see it's quite difficult to sort of do mood evoking with domestic objects, but you know, we have to try. Okay, so just now we're going to move on to a phase at which we start to form something. What I'd like you to do is take the lists of words you've got for each object, and I'd like you to try and form 14 sentences or something like sentences. We don't have to be perfectly grammatical. One of the joys of poetry is that it doesn't require the same sort of strict English grammar as writing a report, for example, might. But if you can try and produce something that has the movement and progression of a sentence so that it has sense and coherence, and it takes a little journey from the beginning of the sentence to the end. So when you arrive at the end of the phrase or the sentence, you are somewhere different to what you were when you started, in terms of the way in which a reader might be thinking about the objects you're writing about.
Do you want us to name the objects, Sarah? Do you want us to name them?
It's really up to you, I think, whether you name them or not.
Okay.
It's not what I'm not doing a guess the object game here.
No, so we can. Yeah.
Yeah, you can name them if you think that would be useful.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yep.
Sorry, Sarah, I'm being a bit of a pest here. Can I just clarify? So we're constructing these 14 descriptions of 14 objects into kind of coherent sentences.
Reasonably coherent. What you'll end up with 14 lines.
I've only described 2 objects so far.
Timothy, can you just wait while I explain to this other lady what's going on? Thank you. If they're not perfect grammatical sentences, that's fine. But kind of phrases that make sense, or sentences or whatever about each object. So you'll end up with like 14 lines. Okay. You can see where I'm going with this.
But try and limit it to 1 line.
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't, I mean, don't worry about sort of rhyming and scanning and stuff like that at the moment. And if it runs into 2, don't worry, because this is just very, very rough.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah, can you please repeat what do we do with the objects? I know you've mentioned that on the chat, so can you just explain verbally
You
as
will
well?
find the full instructions on the chat, actually. My colleague Beth has put them all up there.
Okay, so I didn't miss anything verbally, right?
Well, it depends when you came in. I mean, we have done various stages of the exercise now, so it might be worth looking at the chat, seeing
Okay.
what the stages are and catching yourself up at your own pace.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Give you about another minute on this bit. I'm sorry to keep doing this. I'm aware that we've not got very much time, but not ideal conditions in which to compose poetry, perhaps. Okay, I'm going to stop you on this stage. How's everybody getting on? Is everybody remaining, you know, calm and enjoying themselves and not getting too flustered? The one thing that is important, and Beth raised this on the chat, is that I absolutely am not expecting anyone to go away today with a perfectly honed poem. What I'm hoping you'll go away with is a set of tools to help you not just finish what you do here, but to carry on using this form in your writing, you know, in future. So now we come to, I guess, the sort of beginning of the really creative bit. And after this, I'm then going to give you a rest and I'm going to talk to you for a bit about the sort of finer points of sonneteering. What I'd like you to do is take the lines that you've written, and I would like you to see if you can juggle them around into any sort of order that makes any sort of sense. If you can't, don't worry at the moment, but have a play. Have 5 minutes of playing and see if you can produce anything that is, you know, even if it's looking like a nonsense poem, but something that's starting to look like a whole piece of work. But it really will be very rough at the moment, so don't panic if it's not making sense.
Hello, do we change the words or is it the exact same
Oh,
sentence?
you know, if you need to change the words, you change them. They're your words.
Okay, thank you.
If you sort of feel themes emerging at this point, do, you know, go with that and organise your writing around it and change and tweak things as you wish, because you might find some sort of theme is emerging at this point. I'm getting questions just while you're finishing up, because we're getting near the end of the 5 minutes, but I'm getting a few questions about things like the length of sentences and how you're going to use the words and things. I think it's really important, particularly for those of you who haven't maybe done much writing before, to think in terms of all this being very rough drafts and not try too hard to achieve something very sort of formally precise at the moment. Just to get words down on the paper is the main thing. And then once words are down on the paper, it's a lot easier to mess around with them and edit them than to sit there confronting the blank sheet of paper or the blank screen if anyone's using a screen. So I'd like to stop this stage of the writing exercise here. Has everybody managed to produce 14 lines of something, even if it's total gibberish? This is great. This is really good. So that's incredibly good work in half an hour from a standing start, and with all the palaver of introducing ourselves and all that. Most of you have managed to produce, if not a full 14 lines, at least some lines, which is tremendous, and says a great deal for your creativity. Congratulations. Well done. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move onto screen share so that I can show you a very little PowerPoint that I've made about the sonnet form. We're going to talk specifically about the English sonnet. Those of you who are already experienced in writing or teaching or reading poetry in a professional sense, shall we say, will know that there are lots of different kinds of sonnets. But I think today, you know, for this, we'll stick to the English sonnet, which is perhaps most famously written by Shakespeare. So let's go to the screen share and start the pictures. So, just a minute, just bear with me, sorry. There we are, lovely. This is, I've just done 2 title pages because I love these embroidered domestic objects that I found on a Pinterest site. This one particularly, I think the irons are absolutely fabulous, the way they're even plugged in and everything. So the English sonnet. The basic construction of the English sonnet is that it comes in 3 sets of 4 lines called quatrains, plus a final set of 2 lines, which is a couplet. And this makes your 14 lines. Now, we have a cat, always like a cat. Some poets will write their sections with line spaces. So you'll get each quatrain with a line space and the couplet with a line space, but you can write them all the way through. And I mention this because one of the things about poetry that's important is what it looks like on the page. It's not just the content, but you think about a poem as being a shape on a page, as well as being a series of words with a meaning to communicate to a reader and to set up a relationship with the reader. The best way to think about the utility of these different stages of the sonnet is that each stage in the development of the idea you want to explore in the poem is marked by the shift from one line group to the next. So you've got your 3 quatrains and your final couplet gives you 4 stages of developing the idea of the poem, whatever that is, whether it's something very high-powered and metaphysical or whether it's just daft. Now, the rhythm of the sonnet, which somebody asked me about in the chat earlier, is the iambic pentameter. And that means that each line will contain 5 strong and 5 weak stresses, beginning with a weak. So the line of the iambic pentameter goes ti-tum, 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 ti-tum. And it is said that the reason Shakespeare chose to write in iambic pentameters, because he uses it for the verse in his plays as well, is that it's the closest thing to the natural rhythm of spoken English. And I found that once I knew that, it's something that, slightly maddeningly, I'm listening for all the time. And I think it's true. I think a lot of the way we naturally speak comes out in that ti-tum, 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 ti-tum rhythm. Okay, now rhyme schemes. Traditionally, sonnets rhyme in the pattern A-B-A-B, C-D-C-D, EF, EF, and GG, which means that each set of quatrains has a different rhyme scheme, but that is the rhyme is repeated. So your first quatrain, a line ends with the A rhyme, then the B rhyme, then back to the A rhyme, and then the B rhyme. And it's the same with each of the quatrains, but you are not repeating the rhyme scheme. You have a new rhyme scheme for each quatrain. And then the final couplets at the end, then those two lines will rhyme themselves, but need not rhyme with any of the others. I will go on, I'm going to mention this now, and I will be just going on to talk about this a bit more, but one thing about poetic rules is that they do give you a framework in which to write a poem. They are also there to be broken. So don't worry too much about rigid rhyme schemes and that kind of thing, because rhyming is very difficult in the English language. It's a language which lends itself much more to sort of half rhymes, and you don't need to worry too much about that. I think the key thing that's important is rhythm at this point. Now, the final stanza, the 2-line couplet at the end of a sonnet, is known as the volta. Volta is an Italian word, as some of you may know, and it means the turn. Now, the reason why the last 2 lines of a sonnet are called the volta is because the emphasis changes. The rhyme scheme changes, and the rhyme repeats rather than alternating. And the poetic reason for this is that a sonnet will start on a journey, it will start in a particular direction, but when it reaches the volta, the final couplet, it will change direction in order to reinforce the true poetic meaning of what you've written. And I think that the best way that I can illustrate this is by reading you a sonnet. I'm going to read you a Shakespearean sonnet. I shan't do it justice. You'll see on the screen also that I've marked each line with the rhyme schemes so that you can see how the rhyme schemes actually work in a poem. So this is Shakespeare's Sonnet 18. It's one of his best known. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. And every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest. Nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe, or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. So you can see that what Shakespeare does is he starts with the idea of comparing his beloved to a summer's day. Immediately this starts to fall apart a bit because he says, well, actually, the beloved is lovelier than a summer's day. Then with the third line, rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, he starts on the fact that actually weather isn't a particularly good comparator because weather changes and the beauty of the beloved never does. Thy eternal summer shall not fade. As everybody often thinks of people they love, he's saying that he doesn't want to think about the life of the beloved ending. And he's saying, you know, that love lasts forever. But then comes the volta. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. The this is the poem. So what he's actually saying is, yes, the beloved is absolutely gorgeous, more gorgeous than the weather, more consistent than the weather, more constant than the weather. But actually, the thing that will give the beloved life is not any sort of fanciful idea of eternal life or eternal life in the memory. It's the poem. So in the end, he's writing a love poem, but he's also writing a poem about poetry and poetry's power. And if you took the 2 lines of the Volta away, you'd have a beautiful love poem, but you wouldn't have that final and profoundly significant underpinning, philosophical underpinning, which is the poet writing about poetry and poetry's power. So I hope everybody sees that. It's quite difficult because I can't sort of see all your faces or get feedback from you. I hope that people are putting questions in the chat if they need to, and that Beth is able to address those. I said that rules are made to be broken, poetic rules are made to be broken. So before we go back to writing, I'm just going to give you a couple of examples. And I notice I can't spell subversion here, of sonnets where the poet has had a bit of fun with the form and changed it. And this will hopefully also help to give you creative ideas about what you might do with your lines. So this one by Rupert Brooke, I think, is quite funny. It's a sonnet in reverse, and it goes rather well with the Shakespeare, which builds up the great love poem. I'll read this to you, and hopefully you'll get the joke. And it's called Sonnet Reversed. It's by Rupert Brooke, the First World War poet. Hand trembling towards hand, the amazing lights of heart and eye, they stood on supreme heights. Ah, the delirious weeks of honeymoon. Soon they returned, and after strange adventures, settled at Balham by the end of June. Their money was in Canpacks, B debentures, and in Antofagastas. Still he went cityward daily, still she did abide at home, and both were really quite content with work and social pleasures. Then they died. They left 3 children, besides George, who drank, the eldest Jane, who married Mr. Bell, William, the head clerk in the county bank, and Henry, a stockbroker, doing well. So you see, the delight of that is that it takes the love poem in reverse, and it goes from, you know, the intensity of courtship and honeymoon, down to the humdrum family and working life, down to then they died and left their children. And it's a lovely kind of account of a life, I suppose. And I think he does it with a warmth that makes it not kind of too cynical and disillusioning. But basically what he's done is he's taken the message and he's turned it upside down, and he's put the Volta at the beginning, so that you have that couplet which privileges the joys of love, and then it kind of goes down from there in this rather gently humorous and lovely way. And that's one possibility for something that you can do. And finally, I've got another, and again, it's another romance sonnet. Sonnets are very often used for love poetry. They're one of the most popular forms for love poetry, but of course you can write a sonnet about anything. And this is an unrhymed sonnet written by Beth Ann Finelli. You ask me for a poem about love in lieu of a wedding present, trying to save me money. For 3 nights I've lain under glow-in-the-dark stars I've stuck to the ceiling over my bed. I've listened to the songs of the galaxy. Well, Carmen, I would rather give you your 3rd set of steak knives than tell you what I know. Let me find you some other store-bought present. Don't make me warn you of stars, how they see us from that distance as miniature and breakable. From the bride who tops the wedding cake to the Mary on Pinto dashboards, holding her ripe red heart in her hands. So there you've got, again, a lovely love poem, which I think embraces both the high art of Shakespearean love and the more humdrum that Brooke was writing about, but also shows you how you can do it without rhyming, with internal rhymes and half rhymes. So I'm not quite sure, I'm quite hoping that Beth will be able to circulate all these poems to you after we finish. I'm going to shut this now and go out of screen sharing, I hope. Hang on a minute, stop share, there we are. And then you'll have them as models. I'm sure she will be able to do that, but of course there are thousands of sonnets. They're very easy to find. You can Google sonnets, just look them up and see what's there that might inspire you. But for the bulk of the rest of the night, the time that we now have, sorry, I'm just checking what time we are. We've got 1/4 of an hour. I would like you to wrestle with the lines that you've written and see if by any chance you can turn any of them into the beginnings of a workable sonnet. Now, obviously, to do this, you are going to be a bit more thematic. You're going to organise your random set of domestic objects in some way. You're going to find some connected meaning between them, which I hope you'll be able to do, because they were all your personal choices, which gives you an immediate connected reason for choosing them. So try and think about them as a sort of connected narrative, and think about how you might turn them into a sonnet. You can use the classic rhymes that were used by both Brooke and Shakespeare, one the right way up and one wrong way up, but you can also go, as the Feneley poem does, away from conventional rhyming and do what you want to do. I think the main thing is to get that iambic pentameter rhythm, the ti-tum, 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 ti-tum. Iambic pentameter is a fancy phrase, and it all comes from Greek, but basically what it means is it means 5 steps. So if you think of it in terms of the rhythm of taking 5 steps, ti-tum, 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 and try and get that rhythm, that's what really holds the sonnet together. The rhyme is less important, unless you happen to be one of these fantastically clever people who can just naturally rhyme. I can't, so I always tell myself it doesn't matter. So you've got about a quarter of an hour. Go for it and see what you can come up with, and mainly just have fun.
Hi, Sarah, can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, I just have a small question. The tum-ti-tum-ti-tum rhythm that you mentioned, did both the examples, all the 3, I know the third example did not have it, but the other 2 examples, one by Shakespeare and the second one, did both of them have the tum-ti-tum?
All 3 of them have that rhythm. The third one doesn't rhyme, but they all have that rhythm.
Oh, okay, okay. So how can we tell whether they have the rhythm?
Well, if you read them to yourself, I mean, when you're muted, you can read them aloud to yourself if you want to. You'll hear it.
Okay, okay, thank you. And after the workshop, when we write about a particular theme, and not about objects. So here we are writing about 14 different objects. But if we choose, if we select a particular theme to write about, then how do you suggest we go about the 14 lines? Like, should we think of like a central message and sort of like the climatic, the climax at the end, and then build the 14 lines around 12 lines of the general message, and the 2 lines about the ironic, the counter message at the end? How do we think about this
Well,
theme-wise?
I think it's up to you. And you know, if you go on from here and you want to compose sonnets, all that will be very much dictated by the subject that you choose to write about. This is a means of sort of getting the basic technique. But
Okay.
you know, any piece of writing is very, its structure is very much governed by what it's about. So.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So at the end of this workshop, you know, later, is it okay if we email you a sonnet and receive some feedback from you?
No, I don't think that's going to be possible. I'm sorry, no.
Okay. Okay.
Can I share my poem?
Do you want to read it to us now?
Yeah.
Oh, that would be lovely. Is everybody ready for reading, or would you like a couple more minutes before we listen? Should we have a reading?
Let's have a special one for Timothy.
Let's. Okay, go for it. Are you ready?
He's got too shy now.
Oh, has he? Never mind. Well, look, there's lots of conversation going on in the chat about setting up a way for everybody who's writing today to share what they've written. I think through Live Art Local's website or something like that. So you might be able to write it down, or even make a sound file and send that in. Would that be good? You don't want to read now? Would anybody else like to read? No? That's a shame. Okay.
Well, I'll do mine then.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Do you need to know what the objects were?
No, I think we'd just like to hear the poem, wouldn't we? I think that would be the nice thing.
I did 14 lines, but only managed to include 8 objects, but here it goes. My faceless beauty sits expressionless, yet I know she is all love. With soulful strums, she plucks my heartstrings to make music. I have no control over her, for like a remote, she has control over me. The flame from the candle burns auburn like her hair. The light shines to emphasize the picture frame on the table, lighting up memories from the past. Though blinded by love, my glasses help see, and she stands upright like the music stand before me, rigid and bold.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Absolutely beautiful. It's really, really nice. Yeah, applause.
Thank you very much.
Really, really sort of strong and lovely imagery there. And actually what I really like is the way you kind of elaborate an image in a line and then it flows through, and you manage to turn it round.
Mm-hmm.
And what am I trying to say? And link it into the sort of next phase of the poem. It has a really nice flow to it. It's incredible to have done that in 15 minutes.
Thank you. It was a lovely lesson.
It's a pleasure. So would anybody else like to read anything?
Yeah.
I'll give you a few lines, yeah.
Hang on a minute. I had a gentleman speak first. Unfortunately, I can't see everybody.
Right.
Steve.
Steve, yes. Okay, Steve, please.
Okay. Right. Okay. Right. The frame stands empty, bright, sunlight glinting on the silver beading. The book is lying in the light, inviting only a second reading. In the corner a canvas blank, a pencil needed. It sits on the edge of the table by the photo made long ago, but now as lively as it was then, but oh, so young. A land so far away, my toy lighthouse taking me back to... And in my head a tune, a song about hopes and dreams that we would sing to one another.
Lovely. That's very good and beautifully read as well. Thank you so much. It's fantastic. And I think you got the complete rhyme scheme and everything there, which again is a great achievement in such a short time. I get the impression that you are reasonably experienced at writing poetry, Stevie. Yeah. You're muted, can't hear you.
Yes, I am. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sorry, you were saying.
No, just yes, I am.
Yeah, no, it's really, really lovely. Lovely piece.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then we had one more who wanted to read. who's now yeah, can you unmute yourself? Thank you.
I'm a bit humbled. I was quite pleased with my lines, but I don't think I haven't got a sonnet. I've tried to make my objects as if they're waiting to do their job that they're meant for.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, let's hear.
So to hold prickly pins in your old red heart, to be lit reaching upwards, ready wick, to ring sleek and shiny phone, not just smart, to cut and snip weightily, snap and click, to be read, black words on snow white paper, to be filled firm bowl, blue and gritty deep, to something that scans and ends with waiter, to bloom, scented as baby's cheeks.
That was lovely. Some really fabulous onomatopoeia and alliteration there, which actually, when you're writing about objects, is a particularly powerful way of enlivening them. So yeah, that was great. Thank you. So unless we have anybody else who's burning to share their work, we're just after the finishing time. So that's gone incredibly quickly. Thank you.
Thanks to people who shared. It's been lovely.
Well, it's been thank you to you all for your hard work. I hope you've enjoyed it. As I say, it looks from the chat as though it is going to be possible for people to share work through Live Art Local, and they will be in touch with you about that. And they will also share with you that PowerPoint so that you've got some reminders about the sort of basic points for those who need them, which I know isn't everybody. So thank you very, very much for your time. It's been lovely to meet you all.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.